New York test scores plummet, kids flee, yet empty schools stay open, wasting billions. Now, why are these empty schools staying open? Because of the fucking teachers' unions. Troubling news keeps piling up for New York's public schools. Kids keep performing poorly on standardized tests, fueling a race to the exits by parents seeking better opportunities. That's led to school enrollments well below capacity, yet these schools remain open, draining dollars without boosting achievement. Yeah, and so what's the excuse here, by the way? Like, one of the excuses I always hear for why these schools do poorly is, my class size. There's just way too many kids per teacher. Okay, so 2/3 of the school leaves. Now you actually have smaller class sizes than the rest of the country, and you're still underperforming. All right, so what's the next excuse then? What are you going to blame next? So for taxpayers and parents seeking better schools, it's pure madness. Take the just-released National Assessment of Indoctrinational Progress, aka the nation's report card. It finds just 23% of 8th graders in the shitty are proficient in math and 29% in reading. I had no idea it would be that high, actually. I thought the numbers would be in the single digits. So only 1/3 of 4th graders are proficient in math, and even fewer 28% in reading. So statewide, the best result was just 37% of 4th graders proficient in math. Yeah, I guess we need more liberal policies to fix this. With such dismal results, it's not surprising New York public schools are also losing students at some of the fastest rates in the nation. Data released by the National Center for Indoctrination Statistics shows that the state lost 5.9% of its students between the fall of current year -6 and current year -2, more than all but 4 other states. What are the other 4, though? It lost 3.6 percentage points more students than did neighboring Pennsylvania, for instance, and even 0.7 points more than California. Now, that's bad. Over 80% of New York school districts are still below their pre-pandemic enrollment levels. Well, they did that to themselves. Given New York's demographic trends, including fewer kindergarten enrollments and lower birth rates, student counts are unlikely to rebound in the years to come. As such, lawmakers and taxpayers must closely monitor whether school districts are closing undercapacity schools when necessary. Yeah, so if you allow this, if you just let the teachers' unions do what they want, this is never going to happen. Like, they are never going to close these schools on their own. You need to keep them under a fucking microscope at all times. New Reason Foundation research shows New York public school districts closed fewer schools after the pandemic and only returned to their pre-Corona chain closure levels last school year. Despite the loss of 215,000 students, only 104 traditional public schools were closed between current year -8 and -7, and then current year -2 and -1 school years. In current year -1, New York closed just 16 public schools statewide. The shitty closed none. That's because they got some good unions. Other states with far smaller populations closed nearly as many, and some even more. Among 15 states we examined, for example, Colorado, with less than 1/3 of New York's population, closed 26 public schools in current year -1, even though it had a lower percentage of its students. It lost a lower percentage than New York. Iowa shuttered 12 and South Dakota 11, so it's clear New York is not properly adjusting to its lower enrollment levels. I think part of that is also because they're using the schools as fucking migrant shelters. So maybe they're keeping them open just for that. Who knows? So New York districts have been able to delay closures because legislature regularly approves massive spending increases. The latest federal data shows New York schools receive $35,902 in per student revenues, more than any other state. And yet they're performing worse than most of them. So tell me again, how money's the problem? Similarly, leading the nation's largest school districts, New York shitty schools receive $44,790 per child. That's more than a lot of people make in a year. Fuck. The Empire Center reports state aid alone doubled from $7,000 to $14,000 per pupil over the last 12 years. These large spending hikes make it easier for districts to avoid making tough decisions about school closures. State lawmakers even maintained a hold harmless funding policy, so school districts would not receive less funding than the prior year, even if they lost a large number of kids. So basically, wasting taxpayer money. They should have to do that with their own money. Yeah, we'll see if they'd be as willing to if they had to foot the fucking bill. It's easy for the government to waste money when it's your money, not theirs. Make them put their own money on the line and see if they behave the same way. Georgetown University's Edunomics Lab estimates that districts with under-enrolled schools can save about 4% a year by closing one of every 15 schools. Research from Michigan State Center for Local Government Finance suggests savings can be up to 15% of a district's annual spending per student for every school closed. True school closures are politically fraught. Shutting schools often requires navigating through difficult bureaucratic processes and facing intense backlash from teachers, unions, and parents. So it may be understandable if state and local leaders drag their feet to right-size under-enrolled schools. Yeah, I could understand that. Yeah, the people that actually have to do the closing are probably like, I don't want to put up with this. You know what? Let's do it next year. We could go into these. So yet as disruptive and politically difficult as it may be, delaying a school's closure is financially unsustainable when hundreds of thousands of students have been lost. No, don't worry, they're just going to raise taxes even more. Instead of keeping significantly under-capacity schools afloat with billions of dollars in additional funding year after year, local and state leaders must restore some fiscal sanity to New York's public indoctrination system by consolidating under-enrolled public schools. And they'd have to get rid of some of the bad teachers, too. Then that's the part that they're not going to do, huh?